Marvel's Spider-Man. Into the Spider-Verse. Chapter 31. When you leave the accommodation area with a central temperature control system, you are greeted by the unique northwest wind. The howling cold wind is mixed with sand and gravel brought from the Gobi Desert, hitting your face like a knife. Bida and Lu Lin put on the hoods of their clothes in a tacit understanding and turned their faces to the leeward side as much as possible. Fortunately, the northwest wind is just like the people here. It comes and goes straight, and a coat can keep it out. Unlike the wind in the south of the Yangtze River, the wind carries water. When it blows, it will make you wet, and then it will crazily absorb the warmth from your body. After the two of them walked in the wind in silence for a while, they came to another closed building. He took out the researcher's magnetic identification card and swiped it on the door, and the door opened. The two rushed in and quickly closed the door. Huh, this evil wind, who is causing trouble here day and night. Lu Lin pointed in the direction of the wind and cursed. Bide said speechlessly, you have the ability to stand outside and scold them, and see if they can fill your mouth with sand. I'll go if you go, Lu Lin said with a smile on his face. I won't go. I don't have the ability to tame that monster. Bida shook the sand off his body and patted Lu Lin's body. You don't claim to be a rising star in soil science and a future student. Academician, the task of conquering that yellow sand land is still left to you. Quote. Lu Lin patted his chest. Then it must be me. Let me take over all the deserts on this earth and turn all places into oases where people can live. Then what should I call you in the future? Green Goblin or Sand Goblin? Bid smiled. Go. Isn't it unpleasant? Lu Lin pushed Bide. The two of them shook off the sand and walked along the passage to the living area. The living area is actually a place that simulates a small town market. There are some small shops selling food and clothing here, allowing people to feel the smoke of the fireworks a little bit. But to be honest, it's of little use. Among the researchers, except for young people in their early 20s like Bida and Lu Lin who just came in, the rest are all in their 30s and above. They have been working here for some time. They are all workaholics and stay in other places all day long. In the research institute on one side, they either control the Mars exploration rover to roam on Mars, or study the Martian landscape through space telescopes. They basically don't come here to visit. The center of the living area is the dining hall. The two of them order food and swipe their cards with ease. The cards contain living funds issued by the base every month, so they can eat enough in the cafeteria. Although Bid's body has been strengthened, strangely his food intake has not changed. It may also be that this, inferior, way of energy intake does not actually satisfy his genes, but only allows him to have a physiological feeling of fullness. The food in his mouth was nutritious and tasted good, but Bide tasted nothing of it. At this time, Bide began to miss Kingpin's particle collider. The energy in the particle flow is really delicious. The feeling brought by eating that kind of energy can make every cell and genetic code in his body jump for joy. It's strange. You didn't feel like this when you were there before. Bid was a little confused. He ate biscuits and pastries at Aunt May's house and had lunch at Little Black Spider's house. He felt the deliciousness of the food. Bid's mind began to surge rapidly. Is it because I'm not hungry? This was the first guess. Judging from the time, he had indeed just had lunch at Little Black Spider's house, and only about 2 hours had passed. Just to comply with my friends, I came out to deal with the couple. But even if you are not hungry, you will not lose your basic understanding of food. That's the other reason. Bid silently crossed out this guess. What's the biggest difference between over there and here? An idea came to Bid's mind. It's energy. It's the energy in him. He travels through parallel universes relying on the mysterious power stored in his genes, or in other words, the power of time and space. Could it be that the energy in the body has been consumed after traveling back in time, so what the body needs to replenish now is time and space energy, instead of the calories in these basic foods, and the current situation occurs? Bid felt that he had found the key to the problem. Then he looked at the food on the plate in front of him and smiled bitterly. So, am I suffering from anorexia in disguise? What's wrong with you? Lu Lin looked at Bide's barely touched meal and asked in confusion, have a bad appetite? Bid did not nod or shake his head. Lu Lin sighed and comforted. I know you blame yourself, but who knew there would be spiders in the research room? It was just an accident. Dr. Liao also said later that it was an accident and the main responsibility is not yours. You will resume your work in a while. Spider. Yes, Spider. Lu Lin's words did not comfort him, because Bide had already analyzed Dr. Liao's intention. But his words pointed a direction for Bide. The spider that bit him. This spider actually gave him the ability of Spider-Man in time and space, allowing him to possess the abilities of Spider-Man and also control the power of time and space. What kind of spider is this? He was convinced that their place was just an astronomy research institute for studying Mars. There was no so-called plank road construction here, and there were no additional biological laboratories underground. As for why you are so sure? Very simple. This Mars research base is hundreds of kilometers away from the nearest town, and about 1,780 kilometers from the nearest airport. All the supplies are transported back and forth by a fleet of vehicles. Anyone with a discerning eye can see how much supplies the convoy transports every time, and there is no need to hide it. Moreover, although Bide did not know all of the more than 30 researchers in the research base, he knew a few of them. Most of them were in astronomy majors like him, and a few were in other majors like Lu Lin. But for biology majors, there is absolutely no one. Nonsense. Where did the creatures on Mars come from? Why do you need someone majoring in biology? This is the current consensus of all mankind. But now, Bide had an idea in his mind, and this idea was growing crazily like a weed, and even gradually occupied his entire thought. Is there a possibility? That spider. The spider that bit him. It was not because of the negligence of the cleaning staff or any researcher that it accidentally ran into the well-sealed research room. But it was already inside. In that pile of soil samples that were transported back from Mars by the launch vehicle after all the hard work. When the soil sample was taken out by Bide and prepared to be taken to the research platform for observation, it woke up. Bide was silent as he thought about the spider. Lu Lin thought he didn't believe what he said. So Lu Lin became a little anxious. He leaned next to Bide and whispered in his ear, "Really, I have inside information." Oh. Bide just came back to his senses. Lu Linshan said mysteriously, "Let me tell you, the various soils brought back from Mars with the launch vehicle this time are just the most basic things." Is this happening? Bide asked doubtfully. According to this world's time, that day was actually yesterday. According to Bide's understanding, these things coming from Mars are not actually direct. Instead, it is launched from the rover on Mars, and the first step is to arrive at the Yingwo space station, a space station around Mars in orbit around Mars. Then, the collected things will be launched from the Yingwo space station to the direction of the Earth through the spacecraft. Through precise calculations, the spacecraft was captured by the Tiangong 5 space station orbiting the Earth in low Earth orbit. The reason why Bide knew so clearly was because when he first came here half a year ago, he happened to catch up with the launch of this plan. I heard that it was precisely because of the launch of this plan that a temporary decision was made to recruit a group of graduate students from major universities to supplement the program. In the next 6 months and nearly 180 days, Bide spent most of the time behind his mentor, Dr. Liao Xian, always paying attention to the movements of the return rocket. Things are making a short stop in Tiangong-5. Then, they took the return capsule from the space station into the Earth and arrived somewhere in the Gobi Desert where their base was located. Afterwards, security personnel at the base drove to the landing site and pulled the return capsule back. The base received something the night before yesterday. Because after the thing arrives, it needs to sit for a period of time to eliminate possible space radiation on it before making close contact. Not only that, taking things out of the return capsule is done by dedicated people wearing protective clothing. By the time Bide and the others saw these things, they had already been simply classified. And they could only see the return capsule sitting in a room through the thick protective glass. Because of his excellent grades and good performance after entering the base, Bide was deeply loved by Dr. Liao, so he became Dr. Liao's closer assistant. Yesterday afternoon, Dr. Liao was going to take them for the first soil observation and analysis activity, so he asked Bide to go to the storage cabinet to get a piece of Martian soil labeled Valley Bottom. According to the label, this is a soil sample excavated from the depths of the ground bit by bit through the device on the rover from a valley somewhere on Mars that may have been impacted by a meteorite or formed naturally. The main purpose is to study whether there are water resources underground in the Martian soil and the various components in the water. Bid carefully recalled what he knew and said doubtfully, "It is said that before we came, Dr. Liao and several senior researchers remotely controlled the excavation device on the rover to grind the soil bit by bit. It cost a lot of money. It took more than half a year to dig it out. It is extremely precious. How do you think it is not the most precious sample?" Quote. Lu Lin shook his head. Theoretically, it is indeed very precious, because in order to dig out this soil, several senior researchers took turns to dig it out 24 hours a day, and it is indeed useful for studying Mars. It's of great significance. Bide had no doubts about Lu Lin's words. Although Lu Lin is a bit out of place, his academic level is very high, otherwise he would not have been specially recruited here. Although Bide always felt that he had used some connections to get here, his own strength was also a key point. Moreover, Lu Lin's tutor is Professor Lin Yijiang, a well-known master of soil science in China. This is the real authority on soil science in the country. His soil science research has made great contributions to increasing grain production in Longxia, saving countless lives in disguise. But, Lu Lin changed the subject, guess what? Quote. Bide really wanted to punch this guy, if you fart, hurry up. TCH, it's boring, Lu Lin curled his lips and said, but this time, there is also a stone tablet brought back from Mars with the return capsule. It is suspected to be a stone tablet that has been processed later. Bid. The next plot won't be something like, Yingwo guarding the heart, reviving the spiritual energy, or something like that. Bide said in surprise. Lu Lin. Have you read too many online novels? Do you think this is a novel about cultivating immortals? Lu Lin said speechlessly. You're still talking about me, how are you doing? Bid counterattacked, but is the stone tablet you said was processed the day after tomorrow true? Well, it's true, Lu Lin nodded and said nonchalantly, but it's just a guess. It might be the result of natural wind erosion. Who knows? Bide nodded slightly, seemingly acknowledging Lu Lin's words. Let's not talk about how Lu Lin knew such top secret news. Anyway, this guy definitely has some secret, maybe he is the illegitimate son of some big shot. If what Lu Lin said was true, such a stone tablet really existed. So, all things like Martian soil have to be put on the sidelines. Because, once it is confirmed that the stone tablet has been processed, it will prove that civilization once existed on Mars. Or perhaps aliens visited in the distant past. This alone is enough to shock the entire astronomical world. Because both the former and the latter can confirm that humans are not the only life in the universe. If it is the former, it at least proves that life existed on Mars in the distant past. Even Earthlings may be descendants of Martians. If it is the latter, it means that there may be a civilization secretly observing the Earth in the deep space of the distant universe. It's scary to think about it. My scalp is numb. However, in addition to these two arguments that everyone can think of, Bid has another idea. Parallel universe. Since he can travel to other parallel universes, why can't the existences of other parallel universes travel to his universe? Maybe even the spider that bit him came from a parallel universe. After all, he has the ability to travel through time and space, so maybe the spider has it too. Bid's head hurt a little. There is so little evidence that there is no way to rule out certain conclusions, so we can only brainstorm vigorously. Linner, do you have a way to get close to that stone slab? Bide turned his head to Lu Lin, who was immersed in cooking again. His eyes were bright and seemed to be shining. Lu Lin was startled by Bide's bold idea. Are you crazy? This is top secret. Otherwise, the slate is now the top secret in the base, and at least one platoon of elite soldiers is guarding it around the clock. It will definitely be out of reach for the time being. A platoon. Bid was a little confused. The security department has all gone to see the stone monument. What should we do outside? The security department of this base is almost a reinforced platoon of 50 people. There are almost 3 shifts, alternating with each other. There are about 30 people in each shift. If we directly allocate a platoon to see the stone monument, obviously there will not be enough people at the door, which is unreasonable. Lu Lin rolled his eyes at him. Why have you become stupid? Of course it's the people sent here overnight by the superiors, not Captain Ling and the others. That's it. Bide nodded, thoughtfully. Stealth invasion is Spider-Man's specialty. Although he is not a very qualified Spider-Man, specifically referring to experience, if it is qualifications, Bid who has saved the world of the little black spider is enough, at least he has accepted the Shadow Spider-Man and Spider-Pigman training. He also has some experience in how to sneak into a well-guarded place among numerous enemies. However, Bid was still a little hesitant as to whether he should really sneak in and take a look. If it was exposed, it would really be big news. It will definitely not cause an uproar in society, but it will definitely be taken seriously internally. By then, with the power of the state machine, it will only be a matter of time before his true identity is exposed. It's a pity. If only I had the invisibility ability of the little black spider to isolate the heat source, Bid said, feeling envious of the little black spider at this time. The little black spider's ability is definitely to be the sixth child. Bah, he is the material to be the spy leader. By the way, Lin Zi, Lu Zie, can you help me ask when I can resume work? Bida asked. He thought about it and decided to find a way to go back to the institute first and look for the spider that bit him. If you really can't find it, you can only take the risk and look at the suspicious stone slab. Lu Lin shook his head. I really can't help you with this matter. Although the most important thing is the stone slab, on the surface, the Martian soil is the most precious thing, especially the soil dug out of the ground. You throw it away on the ground, it caused some samples to be contaminated, so it's good that you were not fired directly. Dr. Liao also kept you under great pressure. Quote. Is there really nothing I can do? Bide frowned slightly. Really not. Lu Lin spread his hands and said, why do you love your work so much and are you so interested in Martian soil? Bid couldn't tell him the truth now, so he could only sigh and said, this is the project I have been following since the first day I came to the institute. There's nothing we can do about it. At least we won't be able to escape the 14 days of confinement. As he said this, Lu Lin pointed upward. After all, this matter is not only being watched by our people here, but also by other people. Quote. After saying that, Lu Lin finished his meal and put down his chopsticks. You should just stay there. Wouldn't it be nice to watch movies and read novels in the room? After eating, Bide and Lu Lin separated at the door of the living area. Lu Lin is actually quite busy these days. Because there are many soil samples sent back from Mars, they all come from various places, plains, deserts, hills, above ground, and underground. There are not many researchers in soil science. If it weren't for the fear that his good brother would be hit too hard, Lu Lin might have had lunch at the research institute. Bid returned to his room in the accommodation area. He is in confinement and cannot follow the convoy that purchases supplies out of the base, nor can he go to the research institute. He can only move between the accommodation area and the living area. After closing the door and locking it, Bide focused on his laptop. At the same time, the question he was thinking about when Lu Lin came to his mind again. Why did the time when he traveled to the world of the little black spider happen to be at the end of the main movie? Is it a coincidence? Or is there some mysterious connection? Thinking about it, Bide lifted the lid, and there was still a picture of the movie paused on it. Picking up the mouse, pulling the progress bar to the beginning, I decided to start over and watch the movie again to see what the original plot would be like without my participation. 2 hours later. Looking at the slowly moving subtitles, the ending song echoed in my ears. Bid fell into deep thought. The good news is that he was not recorded in the movie just because he traveled back in time, even though it was a downloaded movie for offline viewing. This shows that neither this movie nor this computer is a carrier and has no direct connection with his time travel. There was no such thing as in a novel he had read before. He really traveled to the world of Little Black Spider, not in this movie. The bad news is that in this way, the time difference between the two worlds cannot be effectively verified. He couldn't even confirm the time flow between the two worlds. This will directly lead to a question, that is, what if he travels to other worlds next time and finds that a long time has passed here when he comes back? And, although the final ending is pretty much the same, with Spider-Man all returning to their respective worlds and Kingpin being brought to justice, under my influence, the plot has deviated greatly. First of all, Little Black Spider's uncle Prowler is not dead, making Little Black Spider a rare spider with an uncle among many Spider-Men. This is a good thing. However, the identity of Little Black Spider was also exposed. Anyone who is interested should be able to find out the true identity of Little Black Spider behind the mask through the Prowler. Bid was not sure whether the future of Little Black Spider would change greatly. Secondly, in the original plot, Kingpin did not die, but was defeated by Little Black Spider and handed over to the police. After that, Kingpin would continue to make trouble. And when he was disturbed, Kingpin was directly committed suicide, and died in pieces, completely cutting off the possibility of making trouble. This will also affect the growth of Little Black Spider. After all, an early boss is missing. In addition, the bond between Little Black Spider and Gwen is gone. In the movie, Little Black Spider and Gwen have a good impression of each other because of some relationships, but the reality is that Gwen is not attracted to Little Black Spider, but has a different bond with him. Am I robbing Little Black Spider's marriage? Bid's face was a little strange. No, Little Black Spider and Gwen have no result, because they don't have the ability to travel through time and space. I am different. Bid found a suitable excuse for himself. After the study, the ending of the movie just ended. Bid clicked across and turned off the movie. Then, he looked at the folder on the screen, and the mouse stayed on it, hesitating a little. In the folder, in addition to Spider-Man 1-inch which he accidentally deleted before, there are several movies, including Spider-Man 2 and 3 of the first-generation Tobey Spider, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 of the second-generation Andrew Spider, and the 3 movies of Homecoming, Far Away, and No Return, of the Holland brother version. In fact, he has another way to verify. That is, travel through time again. He probably felt the power of time and space in his body, although judging from the feedback while eating, it was already in an unsaturated state. But it is far from the level of hungry. Therefore, it is completely feasible to travel through time. However, you cannot travel here. Because he couldn't determine the speed of time between the two worlds. If he stayed there for a period of time, for the past 10 days and a half months or even a year and a half, then his secret would be directly exposed. The safest way is to leave this base temporarily. It just so happened that he was imprisoned due to the accident. Although theoretically, he needs to stay in this base and cannot go out or go to the research institute. But if you have a good communication with your supervisor, Dr. Liao, you may be able to take a relatively long vacation. Of course, some people may think that it is not good to resign directly. The answer is of course not. Not to mention that Dr. Liao is his graduate tutor. This research institute job is directly related to his degree. Even things that are closely related to him cannot be separated from here. The spider that bit him and the slate that seemed to have traces of artificial carvings were all in this base. After leaving here, he would never have the chance to come into contact with them again. You may also completely lose the opportunity to find out the secrets in yourself. Just do it if you think of it. Bide took out his notebook and pen and neatly wrote the words, application form, on the notebook. I, Bide, an intern researcher, recently caused serious sample contamination due to improper operation. Here, I hope to leave the base temporarily for a period of 1 month, and hope for approval. As an outstanding student, Bide had never written a request for leave a few times since he was a child. It took Bide a long time to write it reluctantly. After finishing writing, Bide tore off the page and gave it to Dr. Liao when he came back from the institute in the evening. Bide was 70% sure whether he would agree to her request for leave. It should be 5 or 6 hours before Dr. Liao comes back in the evening. Except for a few specific devices in this base, other devices cannot be connected to the internet. So during this time, Bide decided to re-watch all the Spider-Man movies downloaded on the hard drive. Turning on the 1.5x speed, Bid's enhanced brain can still easily keep up with the rhythm. His thinking is obviously much more flexible than before. At this speed, simultaneous translation can be achieved, and the full version does not require reading subtitles. In one afternoon, Bide finished reading Tobey Spiders 2 and 3 and Super Spiders 1. Then, he closed the computer, opened the door, and waited for Dr. Liao to come back. Dr. Liao's room is diagonally opposite to Bid. Although Dr. Liao is highly respected and a veteran figure in the domestic astronomical community, the older generation is famous for being hardworking. His living conditions are not much better than those of Bide, an intern researcher. At most, it just takes into account the climate problem here and slightly increases the comfort for the elderly. However, Bid waited for several hours. It was not until about 11 o'clock in the evening that Dr. Liao returned to the accommodation area with a group of researchers. There will definitely be a major discovery this time, said a middle-aged researcher. Yeah, I didn't expect that the soil composition of Mars is so similar to the soil of Earth. Mars may have really existed. Another researcher was also telling his conjecture. However, when several people saw Bid standing at the door, they all shut their mouths. Dr. Liao looked at Bide, told the others to go back to their rooms, and then waved to Bide. After entering Dr. Liao's room and closing the door, Bide handed over his application and leave request. Dr. Liao took it, looked at it for a few times, and slapped it on the table. His voice was old but sonorous. Are you angry? Bid shook his head. I know the teacher is doing this for me, but I am really bored staying in the base during this time, so I just want to go out and relax. Bide's language was too pale, and Dr. Liao increasingly felt that his extremely optimistic disciple was angry with him. Because of his excellent grades and his tendency to be highly motivated, Dr. Liao has always favored Bide. Take the simplest example. Generally speaking, domestic leaders in a certain field like Dr. Liao will not accept graduate students. You must know that among Dr. Liao's students, except for Bide, who is a graduate student in his 20s, the youngest of the other senior brothers and sisters is already in his early 30s, and all of them are doctoral candidates. The relationship between tutors and students is actually like the relationship between bosses and employees in the workplace. Tutors hold the power of life and death in the hands of students whether they can graduate or not, so sometimes you will see in the news that some tutors ask graduate students to help with chores, walking dogs, petting cats, and the like. But correspondingly, if you are good enough, the instructor will naturally favor you. From the perspective of benefits, you have this value and can create enough benefits for others, and no one will be able to get along with the benefits. From an emotional point of view, which one do you prefer, a useful subordinate or a mediocre subordinate? Again, the boss's company is in a high-tech field. If the employees are not knowledgeable enough, they will be of no use at all. What is he going to do? Bide happened to be that useful subordinate, and a promising subordinate, in Dr. Liao's opinion. He has always regarded Bide as his successor. He is valued even more highly than those disciples who he has led for many years and who have now graduated one by one and are able to establish their own schools. That's why he is extra tolerant. Even if Bid accidentally broke the precious Martian soil sample, he suppressed it with one hand. 2 weeks of confinement is already minimal compared to the impact of this incident. But he chose to escape. Dr. Liao's chest heaved. Bide had quick eyesight and quick hands, so he quickly supported him and made him sit on the edge of the bed. Teacher, please drink water. Dr. Liao took the water glass and drank it in one gulp. Looking at Bide's well-behaved appearance, he said angrily, did such a small setback knock you down? Teacher, what have I not experienced back then? I was dismissed from my post and sent to another position. I went to the countryside to raise cattle and stayed there for more than 10 years. Bid said nothing. Aren't you curious why my left hand is like this? Dr. Liao raised his left hand. The ring finger and thumb were both broken. It was bitten off by a cow at that time. Bide looked at Dr. Liao's mutilated palm and still said nothing. Dr. Liao's tone softened slightly and he said earnestly, we who do scientific research must not only have a spirit of truth-seeking and knowledge-seeking in science, but we must also be perseverant, so that we can go far on the road of scientific research. Do you understand? Students understand, Bide said sincerely, but students really have no intention of giving up. The students' dream is to uncover the mysteries of Mars in their lifetime, so that humans can land on Mars in the future, and even develop it into our first planet. 2 homes. Bid's words were not completely deceptive. This was indeed his biggest dream ever, the dream before becoming Spider-Man. He once told Dr. Liao about this dream. Bringing it up again now is a way to tell him that he has not given up on his dream. Really just going out to relax? Dr. Liao stared at Bide. Bid nodded heavily. I'm really just going out to relax. Okay. Dr. Liao nodded, picked up the pen on the table, and signed his name on Bide's application. It's not easy to go out for a trip. I'll give you a month's leave, and you'll be given a month's leave in the next few years. We might all have to stay here. Okay, thank you, teacher, Bid thanked. Dr. Liao opened the drawer again, took out a bank card from the drawer and handed it to Bide. You probably don't have any money on you. Use this card first. The password is asterisk 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 asterisk. Teacher, how can I ask for your money? Bide pushed the card back. Just take it if I tell you to. The old man said exactly, and he immediately showed signs of anger. The worst case scenario is that you can pay me back after the project gets the bonus. Okay then, Bid took the card and put it solemnly into his pocket. He really didn't have much money on him. Graduate students only receive a monthly subsidy of 600 yuan, which is directly distributed from the higher authorities. In other words, all consumption in the base is a perk from above, otherwise he would have starved to death. As for the 600 yuan subsidy, he would go out by himself every month or ask the team to buy some snacks for him when the purchasing team was out. Basically, he only had 200 or 300 yuan left every month. In other words, his card balance now amounts to just over $1,000. Obviously, Dr. Liao didn't say anything, but he actually paid a lot of attention to him. Bide felt warm in his heart. After bidding farewell to Dr. Liao, Bide returned to his room and simply packed his luggage. However, it is really not easy to ask for leave for a trip to this base. Even with Dr. Liao's approval, the approval still took 2 days. It wasn't until the 3rd day that Bide's leave application was approved. Coincidentally, there was a flight from the nearby airport to the nearby provincial capital at noon that day. Then, at noon on the 3rd day, 2 base security personnel drove a dune buggy and took Bide to the airport 180 kilometers away. Speechless all the way. The world was as quiet and peaceful as before, and no messy monsters appeared just because Bide became extraordinary. By the time Bid got off the plane, it was already night. He only brought a backpack with him. In the backpack was a change of clothes to hide from others, and a spider silk launcher. He didn't even bring out his laptop. Because this time he planned to find a suitable place and travel directly through it. The laptop was too big and he wasn't sure he could carry it there. In comparison, a mobile phone is much more convenient. Gwen and the others can bring their mobile phones there, but there's no reason why she can't. After Bid came out of the airport, he found a hotel nearby and slept for the night. The next day, he checked out of the room, searched for a nearby famous scenic spot on his mobile phone, pretended to go mountain climbing, and went into the forest. Among the high-rise buildings, a train was traveling rapidly. However, the strange thing is that although the train has already passed the terminal, it did not stop. Instead, it continued to move at a very high speed. In front of the train is the Cross River Bridge under construction. There is no road ahead. On the locomotive, a young man wearing red tights stood there, thinking hard about countermeasures. His name is Peter Parker. Spider-Man of this world. Previously, he was fighting fiercely with Dr. Octopus who suddenly arrived. However, the cunning Dr. Octopus lured him onto the city train and destroyed the train's brakes. Because he knows that with Spider-Man's consistent style, it is impossible to just sit back and watch the innocent people on the train die. This is the hero's weakness. The next moment, Peter made a surprising decision. He moved his left and right hands together, shooting out spider webs to the buildings on both sides of the track, and the other ends of the webs were tightly held in his hands. He actually tried to stop the train with his own power. The pull of the spider silk on both sides and the kinetic energy accumulated when the train behind him was traveling at high speed were also constantly destroying his body. Let him let out a scream or a roar. The strong force caused all the glass on the metal front of the car to explode, and even the carriage was severely deformed, but Peter still did not let go. On the tall building next to him, Dr. Octopus fixed himself firmly to the wall with 2 mechanical tentacles, looking down like this. There was a hint of a conspiratorial smile on the corner of his mouth. Octopuses in the deep sea can, like the most flexible chameleons, change their color and structure in response to their environment. Sometimes it becomes like a stone covered with algae, sometimes it disguises itself as a bunch of coral, and when the prey is close, it suddenly appears and pounces on the prey, and the prey has no time to realize what is happening. At this time, he seemed to be a real octopus. waiting for Spider-Man to exhaust his power, then he suddenly appears and captures him easily. This is Dr. Octopus. Although he has great strength, he is better at using his extraordinary wisdom to deal with his enemies. Snap. Dr. Octopus, who was looking down attentively, waiting for the opportunity to take action, didn't notice that a slight sound sounded behind him. Then, a head poked out from the roof. He first glanced at Dr. Octopus hanging 6 or 7 meters below him and said, "Tisk." Then, following the sound, he looked down at Peter Parker who was pulling the train. "I thought I would wear it to the beginning, but I didn't expect it to go directly to the middle." Who? Hearing the whisper above, Dr. Octopus suddenly raised his head. Bid looked at this, classic, Dr. Octopus carefully, and even stretched out his hand to say hello. "Hello, Dr. Otto Octavius." Thump, thump, thump. Dr. Octopus frowned slightly, used strength with his mechanical tentacles, and climbed to the top of the building in a few clicks. He stood not far in front of Bid, looked at Bid's oriental face, and asked, "Who are you?" Bid smiled and said, "You don't know me, but I know you, and I also know a female version of you." Huh. Dr. Octopus frowned even more tightly, confused and a little annoyed. "What do you mean?" Literally, Bid shrugged, looking at Dr. Octopus with interest, not afraid of Dr. Octopus attacking him. Although he had just used his ability to travel through time, he consumed a lot of power in his body. But it did not affect his combat effectiveness. If the total space-time power that can be stored in his body is set to 100%. Then, after absorbing part of the energy in the collider, his space-time power was 90%. Then, traveling back to reality consumed between 40% and 50%, that is, when his genes felt hungry, it was because there was less than half of the space-time power left. However, in the past few days, he found that the space-time power was slowly increasing. It can recover about 1% to 2% every day. This discovery was very surprising. Because it means that he does not need to go out of his way to find something like a collider, he only needs to have enough time to recover energy. And this time, the energy consumed was not as much as expected, only about 20% to 25%, which is about half of the previous time. The space-time energy in his body is enough for him to travel back directly once. Through this crossing, he also understood one thing. His true power should have been awakened the day after being bitten, that is, when he crossed into the world of the little black spider. And it was precisely because of awakening that he could capture the space-time fluctuations when the collider was turned on, and then activate his ability to cross over. However, at that time, he had just awakened, and the energy in his body should only be enough to cross over. This caused almost all of his power to disappear after he went over, leaving only a spider sense, and he became almost the same as an ordinary person. But according to the previous experience with Miles, as long as he kept more than 10% of the space-time power in his body, it would be enough for him to exert his strength normally. And if this energy reaches a higher level, such as when it is almost full like before, it can exert stronger strength. As for whether it will be stronger after exceeding the threshold, Vida dare not think about it now. Maybe he will die if he tries, or maybe he will be true if he tries. Moreover, even if he really wants to try, there is not so much space-time power for him to absorb. Not every world has Kingpin, and not every Kingpin makes a collider. Dr. Octopus is not someone to be trifled with. Although he claimed that wisdom was his greatest talent, he was now combined with mechanical tentacles, and his thinking was also affected to a certain extent by the mechanical tentacles, making him even more violent. Seeing the joke in Bid's words, Dr. Octopus grinned, and 2 mechanical tentacles attacked Bid from the left and right. "I won't kill you, I will catch you and ask what I want." "Really?" Bid smiled, stretched out his hand and pressed his chest, while the other hand took out the hood from his pocket. Wow! It was as if there was a stream of water, flowing rapidly from his chest to his limbs. In less than a second, his body and the clothes on his body were completely wrapped in the nano-metal suit. At the same time, his body did a backflip, lightly avoiding the attack of the 2 mechanical tentacles. At this time, Bid also happened to put the hood on his head. Then, a Spider-Man wearing a red and blue spider suit appeared in front of Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus was slightly stunned. "You are Spider-Man. Then who is the person below?" At this time, he didn't know that Spider-Man was Peter Parker, the student of his good friend and with whom he had a good chat. No, no, before Peter could speak, Dr. Octopus shook his head and denied his words. Your clothes are different from his, and yours are more advanced. Did you just use nanofluid metal? Wow, this is really good technology. Which new laboratory did you come from? Dr. Octopus is indeed a crazy scientist. Just by seeing some of Peter's operations just now, he associated a lot of things by himself. While Peter was speechless, he also recognized him a little. To be fair, although this male version of Dr. Octopus is short and fat, his appearance is completely incomparable to that of the female version. But if he has to choose one between the two, Peter will definitely choose the male version in front of him. Because the female version is crazy and there is no cure. And the one in front of him is just because the chip on his back that controls the mechanical tentacles was damaged by electric shock, which caused a certain degree of paranoia in his personality. From the fact that he repented after being electrocuted at the last moment and chose to sink into the sea with his mistakes, we can see that he is not incurable. Moreover, there is actually a detail in the movie. Even in a paranoid state, Dr. Octopus was just obsessed with continuing his research. Whether he was robbing money or facing those who stood up to protect Spider-Man on the train, he did not kill them. This shows that his nature is not bad. He is just crazy to achieve his goal. Do you want to know? Defeat me and I will tell you. Peter kicked his feet on the ground and counterattacked Dr. Octopus. After Dr. Octopus knew that Peter was not the Spider-Man he wanted to catch, he lost interest in him. He himself had no hostility towards Spider-Man, but he needed to obtain tritium chuon, first-tone elements from Harry Osborn to provide core materials for his artificial sun experiment. Harry Osborn, who believed that Spider-Man killed his father, proposed to let Dr. Octopus exchange Spider-Man for tritium on the condition of catching Spider-Man. Therefore, Dr. Octopus does not want to have too much entanglement with Bid, a healthy Spider-Man. All he wants now is to go to the train below, capture the unlucky Spider-Man who is almost done with it, get what he wants, and then go back and continue his experiment. Dr. Octopus, who had no intention of fighting, blocked Bid's attack with one mechanical tentacle, and threw the other one hard, trying to knock Bid away. But how could Bid let him have his wish? This is not the first time that Dr. Octopus has taken action. The female version of Dr. Octopus on Little Black Spider's side has much more combat experience than the guy in front of him who has just become Dr. Octopus. Even if their core battles rely on artificial intelligence in mechanical tentacles, artificial intelligence still needs to learn and improve. Therefore, the original version in front of me has lower combat power than the female version. With this kind of direct attack, Bide didn't even need the spider to react. He reached out his hand, grabbed the mechanical tentacle that came over, and then pushed it hard to the ground, pulling the center of it down, directly affecting the balance of Dr. Octopus's entire body. A spider silk was spit out and stuck to the mechanical tentacle. At the same time, he exerted force on the side with his feet, directly pulling the head of the mechanical tentacle, circling around Dr. Octopus and coming behind him. Only then did the other mechanical tentacle react and hurriedly chased after Bide. But Bide did not confront it head-on. He continued to circle Dr. Octopus. Although the mechanical tentacles are long, they can't help but play like this. Dr. Octopus had to let the mechanical tentacles continue to chase Bid, while also letting his body rotate to prevent himself from being tied up by the tentacles. In order to fight better, he even mobilized another one of the two tentacles used to cling to the ground, and chased Bid together with the previous one. At the same time, the one held tightly in Bide's hand was also trembling violently. This mechanical tentacle has a single strength of 8 tons, but in the face of Bid's grip strength of more than 20 tons, it is destined to be in vain. Okay. Stop spinning. Dr. Octopus couldn't bear it anymore. He was just a scientist and scholar, and his body had not been strengthened. How could he withstand the fierce battle? If it hadn't been for the help of a mechanical tentacle, with the intensity just now, he would have been lying on the ground by now. What on earth do you want from me? Dr. Octopus asked angrily after taking a few breaths. Arrived. Are you anxious? That's it. Bid finally realized the joy of torturing food, and he felt a little bit excited for a moment. Seeing that he was about to run away, he immediately used Spider-Man's exclusive magic stunt, Trash Talk Attack in taunting style. A black line floated over Dr. Octopus's head. By virtue of his circling style and trash talk, Bide finally found Dr. Octopus's flaw at this time. He used his free right hand to spin out a piece of spider silk, grabbed another mechanical tentacle that was coming towards him, and then pulled it, spinning his hand in the air. The two mechanical tentacles were entangled together. This is not over yet. Bid, who has been taught by the Shadow Spider-Man, also implements his philosophy of killing others while they are sick. Bid used his right hand to hold the spider silk wrapped around the two mechanical tentacles, jumped up, found a suitable angle, stretched out his left hand, and launched a series of spider silk bomb attacks. After these spider silk bombs hit the mechanical arm, they exploded one after another and turned into small spider webs. Countless spider webs overlapped each other and soon entangled the two mechanical tentacles tightly. Even though they each have 8 tons of power, they can't break free for a while. Dr. Octopus didn't dare to continue like this time. He let the remaining mechanical tentacles usually used to protect him also take action. The remaining 2 mechanical tentacles attacked Bid again, preventing him from continuing to do bad things to the other 2 mechanical tentacles. But at this time, Bid had achieved his goal. From the beginning, his real purpose was Dr. Octopus. As we all know, Dr. Octopus is just an ordinary obese middle-aged man, and his combat power relies entirely on his 4 mechanical tentacles. You can imagine what will happen when he loses the protection of his mechanical tentacles and allows a mutant warrior like Spider-Man to rush in front of him. Dwang! Bid gave an uppercut and hit Dr. Octopus hard on the chin. Dr. Octopus rolled his eyes and fainted on the spot. This is the result of him putting in a lot of effort. If you use all your strength, you can almost blow his head off with one punch. Bah! However, Dr. Octopus was unconscious, but the mechanical tentacles with artificial intelligence were still active. A mechanical tentacle attacked Bid again. Bide didn't expect that these guys could actually act alone. Because there was no such scene in the movie, he thought that the mechanical tentacles and Dr. Octopus had become one. Bid jumped back slightly to avoid the blow. However, just when he was about to counterattack, the remaining 2 mechanical tentacles dragged Dr. Octopus's body away in a tacit understanding and ran away. This level of intelligence is really high. Bid raised his eyebrows. He had no intention of catching up and just let him run away. For him who is familiar with the plot, it is not difficult to find Dr. Octopus. The top priority is to meet the Spider-Man of this world. The first generation, Tobey's version of the bully Spider-Man. Bid did not take back his suit, but jumped directly from the tall building and fell to the train carriage below. During the short period of time when Bid and Dr. Octopus were fighting, the train below was finally stopped by Peter. Tobey Spider, who had exerted extraordinary power, was almost exhausted at this moment. The train passengers who were grateful to him for risking his life to save themselves carefully transported him from the front of the train, which had already stuck out of the rails, to a safe place in the second carriage. Careful, gentle, and slow. Everyone worked together and placed the Tobey Spider on the floor of the carriage. Is he still alive? A woman holding a child asked quietly. He, a middle-aged man said, looking at the young face under the Tobey Spider mask with some disbelief, he is just a child, not even as old as my son. Others also stared at Tobey Spider's face in disbelief. The heroic Spider-Man, who has been working silently for them without asking for anything in return, is actually a child just that old. According to time calculation, Peter Parker was bitten by a spider when he was 15 years old. 2 is 2 years after 1, that is, he was 17 years old. At this time, Tobey Spider also woke up leisurely. Looking at the people surrounding him, he was suddenly startled. His mask had been thrown away because it caught fire in the previous battle. This means he was exposed. Tobey Spider was a little confused and a little panicked, so he sat up. A black man came up to him and said softly, "It's okay." Then, he waved behind him and called 2 children over. The 2 children had just picked up the mask dropped by Tobey Spider. Although a small part was scorched and deformed, the fire on it had been extinguished. "We won't tell others," the child's small face revealed solemnity. Tobey Spider thanked him, took the mask and put it on again. Boom. Just when Toby Spider stood up and was about to say something, a small sound came from the roof of the car. At the same time, Toby Spider frowned. The spider sense is activated. Dangerous. Wrong. Doesn't it seem dangerous? Toby Spider was confused. This was the first time he had such a strange reaction. In the past, when the spider sense was activated, it was a sign of impending danger, but this time. Aha! A figure suddenly hung down from the side of the carriage. Immediately afterwards, the side window was tapped twice, and a head wearing a spider mask appeared outside the window. Hi! Toby Spider's eyes suddenly widened. What's the situation? Everyone in the carriage was also in an uproar. Another Spider-Man actually appeared. Why are there two Spider-Men? Toby Spider quickly walked to the carriage door, jumped with all his might, and jumped onto the roof of the carriage. The pain in his body made him grit his teeth. Who are you? Me. I'm Spider-Man 2. Recommended books, books from friends. If you are interested, you can click in and have a look. Is it true? But, how is this possible? Toby Spider's first reaction was disbelief. Bide tilted his head slightly. Go up and talk. Can you still move now? Of course, who do you think I am? Toby Spider said bravely. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and pointed at the house next to him. See. A thread of spider silk was shot out, and his hands grabbed the spider thread at the same time. But perhaps because he was seriously injured and his body had not yet recovered, his reaction was a beat slower, and the spider silk was released directly. Bid looked on with some amusement. The young Spider-Man in front of him was different from the middle-aged version he had seen. He still had the vigor and unyielding spirit of a young man. Of course I know who you are, Bully Maguire. Bide walked over with a smile. Bully Maguire. Toby Spider turned his head in confusion. Who is that? It sounds quite. But I don't know him. You got the wrong person. Okay, Peter, come with me. Bid shook his head helplessly and stopped teasing him. He reached out and grabbed his shoulders, spun out the spider silk from his right hand, and took him flying towards the roof. Toby Spider originally wanted to resist, but the opponent's hand didn't use much force, so he could break free. But when he saw the spider silk spun out of Bide's hand and the other party accurately called his name, he honestly chose to stand still and let Bide take him up. You really are Spider-Man 2. It's incredible, I thought I was the only one. Toby Spider started chattering while flying in midair. Bid ignored him. When the two landed on the roof, Bide let go of Toby Spider, took off his hood, then pressed it on his chest and took off his nanometal suit. Wow, wow, wow. Toby Spider's attention was immediately diverted, his eyes lit up, and he exclaimed in amazement, "Man, you are so cool." Toby Spider looked down at his tattered suit, and then at Bid, who had taken off his suit to reveal the clothes that were still as clean as new underneath, and he was immediately envious. Look at other people's battle clothes. With a swish, they can be put away. Look at his again. It will fade every time it is washed. If you accidentally stuff it into the washing machine with other clothes, the clothes will be completely ruined. After the color faded, he had to touch it up with paint, otherwise it would damage his image as Spider-Man. Not only that, although he didn't take a closer look, he could tell that the suit in front of him seemed to be much better than his in terms of protective performance and other aspects. Hateful. Thinking of this, Toby Spider felt even more envious. Envy almost drove him to separation. Cool. I think so too, Bid smiled. Why don't you make one? Toby Spiders are clearly moving. But soon he said dejectedly, I have no money. Toby Spiders are indeed poor. In Petter's world, this version of Toby Spider is regarded by many as the most classic, Spider-Man, movie. Even in the two subsequent generations, there are many pictures that pay tribute to it. For example, hanging a kiss upside down, pulling a train, etc., you can find similar modified scenes. But at the same time, Toby Spider is also the most down-to-earth Spider-Man. After taking off the suit, he is a very ordinary, even mediocre person. Unlike the Andreas Spider, he has super manufacturing ability. Unlike Dutch brother Spider, who has a very rich godfather. On the contrary, he was poor. He made a living by delivering food to people, occasionally posing for photos of himself wearing a spider suit and going to the newspaper to exchange for money. Sometimes he even couldn't pay the rent. Bid once thought that he was the most miserable superhero. Bid reached out and patted his shoulder. It's okay, I don't have any money either. Toby Spider expressed doubt. Bid's clothes looked good, and he also had such a magical spider suit. He didn't look like he was broke. However, Bid really had no money. The clothes he was wearing were bought at the base, which were internal models. They were considered as benefits and the cost was not high. In addition, the era he lived in was more than 10 years later than the era of Toby Spider, and the popular technology was more advanced, so he naturally looked more upscale. In fact, the total value of the set he wears is only over 100 yuan. As for the spider suit, it was all procured for free. But no matter how he explained Toby Spider, he didn't believe it. Okay, Peter, why don't you go change your clothes first? Bid pointed at Toby Spider and said. So you are really Spider-Man. Why haven't I seen you before? Are you from another city? Toby Spider walked along the roof of the building with Bide, but he still asked curiously. Another city. You can say that, Bid nodded slightly. Wow, cool. Toby Spider exclaimed. He immediately showed an expression of realization. I understand, you come from that mysterious eastern country on the other side of the ocean, right? Bruce Lee, ho ho ho. As he spoke, Toby Spider assumed several Jeet Kune Do postures. Do you know that you are teasing Aunt May so much? Bide complained. He pointed to the top of his head. Actually, I come from another world. Another world. Toby Spider paused and turned to look at Bid, his eyes widened. What other world do you mean? Yeah, Bid nodded, approving his idea. You are actually a ghost. Toby Spider backed away. Bid. Ahem, just kidding, Toby Spider showed his white teeth and laughed, then excitedly approached Bid. So, does the countless worlds Democritus said really exist? Atoms move randomly, sharply, and messily in the void, colliding with each other, breaking, and combining into various shapes, and then colluding with each other to form the world and the things in it. Every collision, breaking, and combination has infinite possibilities, and countless worlds are formed. Wow, this is so cool. Yes, Bid was a little surprised. He thought that Toby Spider might not know these things. After all, as far as he knew, Toby Spider was only in high school now, but he did not expect that his knowledge was unexpectedly wide. Even some of the things he said were completely unknown to Bid. It seems that genius is genius. Even if you go to the same public school and have to work in your spare time to pay for living expenses, you can still acquire a wealth of knowledge just by relying on some contacts during your spare time. Multiverse, wow. What kind of existence would that be? Is your world the same as ours? Toby Spider asked curiously. Bid shook his head. Although some multiverses are parallel universes, each universe actually has some slight differences. For example, I have been to another universe before and met 7 different Spider-Man. Oh my god, that's really true. Toby Spider was quite excited and couldn't even find a suitable adjective to describe his mood at the moment. Bede continued. I have also seen a female version of Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus. It's Dr. Otto, right? I didn't expect there to be a female version. Toby Spider had a strange expression on his face. Of course, there are all kinds of wonders in the world, Bid said. Spider-Man also has a female character. Wow. Toby Spider completely transformed into a curious baby. So Bid simply sat down. The two of them just sat on the edge of a tall building tens of meters tall, looking at the sky and talking about Bid's experience in the ultimate universe. What a pity. It was such a wonderful experience. Why didn't the particle collider pull me over? After listening to Bide's description, Toby Spider felt both longing and regret. Although he is Spider-Man, he is just a 17-year-old kid. The longing for wonderful adventures is a normal yearning for people of this age. There will be a chance, Bid patted Toby Spider on the shoulder. He has watched No Return for Heroes. In No Return for Heroes, Toby Spider was taken to the world of Dutch Spider and went on such a wonderful journey. In fact, if you want to see Toby and Andrew Spiders, it is fastest to go there directly. It's just that the world over there is too complicated and involves too many things, and Bide doesn't dare to get involved in it for a short time. Toby Spider didn't know what Bid really meant, and his eyes lit up. Can you take me there? Bid said vaguely, not expecting that Toby Spider would get the wrong meaning. It's not possible yet, but it should be possible in the future. That's great too. Toby Spider laughed. Okay, how's your resting place going? Bid asked. Although they were getting to know each other and chatting just now, it was also because Bid saw that Toby Spider's body had been severely traumatized by the hand-pulled train and wanted him to rest for a while. The Toby Spider jumped up with great agility. He clenched his fists, and the muscles in his arms bulged. I feel completely recovered. Bide nodded and put on the nanometal suit again. Then let's go, lead the way. The two jumped off the tall building one after the other. While Petter and Toby Spider had a cordial meeting, Dr. Octopus on the other side was not so comfortable. The artificial intelligence in the mechanical tentacles ran with the unconscious Dr. Octopus for a while, then returned to his laboratory in an abandoned church before putting him down. After a while, Dr. Octopus woke up. In a corner of the church, Mary Jane, who was tied with a thick iron chain, saw Dr. Octopus' miserable state and laughed loudly. Didn't you go to find Spider-Man? Why were you beaten like this? Huh? Dr. Octopus slapped his head, a little annoyed when he heard Mary Jane's ridicule. But he didn't take action against Mary Jane because of this. Dr. Octopus didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man because Harry Osborn only told him that Peter Parker and Spider-Man were friends, because he always took pictures of Spider-Man. So Mary Jane is a hostage, and only with her in hand will Peter Parker beg Spider-Man to rescue her, so that he can have a chance to capture Spider-Man. This can also be said to be a mistake. Turning his gaze to the collider behind him, Dr. Octopus was a little confused. He could be sure that the Spider-Man who defeated him was definitely not the Spider-Man who had always appeared in front of the public. Because not only are their equipment different, but their fighting styles are completely different. In the past, Spider-Man's attacks were fast, but there was no method. Facing his 4 mechanical tentacles, he is often in a hurry. But the new one's strength and speed are much higher than those of the previous Spider-Man. And the most important thing is that his shots are very ruthless. Directly target the vital parts to attack. Simple and effective. It's scary. Where did that Spider-Man come from? Dr. Octopus was puzzled. Hey! If you don't let me go, Spider-Man will beat you up. Mary Jane did not give up and was still shouting loudly. Shut up. Dr. Octopus was furious, and a mechanical tentacle came quickly and stabbed into the ground in front of Mary Jane. The whole ground seemed to tremble. Mary Jane was silent. She originally thought that Dr. Octopus would give up the idea of catching her if he was afraid of being beaten, but she didn't expect that this weirdo was not afraid at all. For a moment, she didn't dare to anger him anymore. However, she did not go to anger Dr. Octopus, but Dr. Octopus refused to let her go. Because he suddenly thought that his employer, Harry Osborn, seemed to have some entanglement with the girl in front of him. What is your relationship with Harry Osborn? A mechanical tentacle hovered in front of Mary Jane with its claws and teeth, and the cold breath of metal penetrated her eyes. Mary Jane turned blue with fright and said tremblingly, We are just friends. Really? It's just, friend. A smile appeared on Dr. Octopus's lips. Next moment. Uh-huh. A mechanical tentacle reached out, untied the chains on Mary Jane's body, and then grabbed her. Then let's go meet your friend. I hope you have some weight in his heart. Because of the second Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus decided to give up capturing Spider-Man in exchange for tritium elements. Hostages may also be a good choice. In the Osborn family mansion, Harry Osborn sat silently in front of the window, with a glass of red wine in his hand, but he had no intention of drinking it. He didn't know whether what he did was wrong or right. In order to satisfy his desire for revenge against Spider-Man, he revealed to Dr. Octopus that Peter Parker and Spider-Man are good friends. This move will also put his best friend Peter in danger. On one side is his father's hatred, on the other side is his best friend. Harry's heart was filled with pain and confusion. But the matter has come to this, and he can only go on like this. Click. There was a crisp sound. The door suddenly opened. Who? Harry stood up, picked up the dagger beside him, and walked slowly toward the door. Call. A whirlwind blew in from the window and passed through the furnishings in the room. The sound passed into Harry's mind and seemed to become bursts of crazy laughter. Who? Come out. Harry shouted as he unsheathed his dagger and turned around. It turns out that there is a life-size mirror over there. Suddenly, the figure in the mirror was not himself, but his deceased father Norman Osborn. Son, it's me. The father in the mirror actually spoke. Dad. Harry was stunned. I thought you had. No, I have always lived in your heart, Harry, the father in the mirror said. Now, it's time for you to appear. Revenge. A trace of confusion flashed in Harry's eyes. Can I really take revenge? But that bedbug is really powerful. Coward. The man in the mirror became furious and shouted, You coward. No. I'm not a coward. I've asked Dr. Octopus to catch him. I will definitely kill him with my own hands. Harry roared. As he spoke, he threw the unsheathed dagger in his hand towards the mirror. Wow. With a crisp sound, the life-size mirror was directly shattered, and the broken lenses fell to the ground. In Harry's shocked eyes, a secret room was revealed behind the mirror. Because no one has entered all year round, the secret room is already covered with cobwebs and dust. And at the end of the only road in the secret room, there is a door. After hesitating for a moment, Harry carefully walked through the broken mirror and walked along the road towards the door. Tread, tread, tread. Crisp footsteps sounded in the secret room. As he got closer to the door, Harry's heart beat rapidly involuntarily. Finally, he stopped in front of the door and put his hand on the dusty door handle. He had a strong feeling. He was convinced that there was something calling him behind this door. Crunch. With a groan, a thick layer of dust fell on the wooden door that had not been opened for too long, staining Harry's well-organized hair and expensive clothes, making this pampered young man fall to the ground. Like a homeless man on the street. But at this moment, Harry had no intention of paying attention to this. His eyes were fixed on an object on the shelf next to the door. It was a green metal mask with a green face and fangs. It looked a bit like a demon. Of course he knows this thing. 2 years ago, a super criminal wearing green armor and fighting with high technology appeared in New York. He owned a high-explosive grenade and a glider that could carry people at high speed, causing chaos in the city center. But later, he disappeared inexplicably. Some people say that after being defeated by Spider-Man, he changed his ways and changed his mind. Some people also say that he went to other cities after being defeated by Spider-Man. But now, Harry knew that they were all wrong. The reason why he didn't show up was because he was dead. It turns out that his father is the Green Goblin. Buzz. The light behind him also suddenly turned on at this moment. Harry turned around and saw rows of shelves installed in the wall behind him. On the shelves, rows of fist-sized balls that looked like pumpkins were neatly stacked. This is the pumpkin grenade commonly used by the Green Goblin. This time, his father's identity was further confirmed. Now that armor and pumpkin grenades have appeared, then. Harry continued walking inside. Soon, a workbench appeared in front of him. On the workbench, there is also a glider that has not yet been assembled. Harry walked over to the table, stretched out his hand, and placed it gently on the glider. He is young, but as the son of the president of a technology group, his knowledge is definitely high. This glider and the rows of pumpkin grenades behind him are his power of revenge. It is the true legacy left to him by his father. He turned around and saw a glass tube placed in an open secret compartment on the side. Picking up the glass tube, the green liquid flows quietly according to the tilt angle. The cold touch reached the apex of his heart through his palm, gradually freezing his heart. Bang! There was a noise. Immediately afterwards, the building also trembled slightly. A sound and a tremor, very rhythmic. Originally, Harry would not be able to detect this kind of movement with ordinary sense, but this secret room was created quite cleverly. In addition, it was very quiet at this time, so he noticed it immediately. The most important thing is that he has had this familiar feeling before. It's Dr. Octopus. Harry narrowed his eyes slightly, carefully placed the glass tube containing the green liquid back into the secret compartment, and closed the secret compartment. Then, he came to the shelf, picked up a pumpkin grenade from the shelf, tried it, and found that it could be held in one hand, so he took it in his hand with confidence. After doing all this, Harry closed the door of the secret room and walked out along the corridor of the first secret room from which he came. When Harry left his father's room and returned to his own room, he found that 2 uninvited guests had appeared here. One is Dr. Octopus, an old acquaintance. There is another one, it turns out to be Mary Jane. MJ. Harry hurriedly stepped forward. Otto, what do you want to do to her? Let her go. Seeing Harry's performance, Dr. Octopus raised a smile on his lips. It seems that his sudden choice was not wrong. There really is some secret relationship between this little girl and this fair face. But isn't this little girl Peter's girlfriend? He remembered seeing the two of them making love to each other in the coffee shop not long ago. Thinking about this, Dr. Octopus glanced doubtfully at Mary Jane, who was being held by one of his mechanical tentacles. But soon, he lost the desire to explore this issue. What does the love between young people have to do with him? Now he just wants to get the tritium element and then go back to continue his great experiment. He, Otto Octavius, will surely become the greatest scientist in the world. Because he will control the energy of the sun and have unlimited energy. The longing for beauty forced Dr. Octopus back. He lifted Mary Jane into the air, immediately causing Mary Jane to scream in terror. Now, give me the tritium element. Otherwise, I will let her die in front of you. No, this is different from what we agreed. Harry said angrily. He still maintains a certain amount of sanity and does not want to expose in front of Mary Jane that he asked Dr. Octopus to capture Spider-Man. Really? Then just collect her body. Dr. Octopus sneered, and the mechanical claw at the tip of the mechanical tentacle began to exert force. Mary Jane let out one continuous scream after another, and all the bones in her body were cracked. Stop! Stop, you fool! Harry became anxious. He gritted his teeth, turned around and ran to the wall. After pushing the mural on the wall away, he revealed the safe behind it. Harry entered the password as quickly as possible and opened the cabinet. A well-made high-pressure container is placed in the safe. What is stored in the high-pressure vessel is the radioactive element that Dr. Octopus is obsessed with, tritium. The moment he saw the tritium element, Dr. Octopus immediately became excited. He casually threw Mary Jane on the sofa aside, and pushed Harry away with a backhand push from a mechanical tentacle. At the same time, the body was unconsciously attracted to the tritium element and walked towards the safe. And just then, go to hell! Exclamation mark quote. With a roar, a ball was slammed hard at Dr. Octopus by Harry. Thanks for watching.